Donald starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, we've got some breaking news that happened just minutes ago. This is 24 hours after Rob Bonta was on this program discussing the lawsuit that he, as California's Attorney General, filed along with Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell in federal court in Boston, and about 24 other states joining them on that. That judge in Boston has now ruled in their favor just now and just issued a restraining order blocking Donald Trump's executive order to the Postal Service, trying to seize control of the envelopes they use to and from on voting and the voting lists that they're allowed to use. So this is a major breakthrough here on this story. Congressman Jamie Raskin, a former professor of constitutional law, an expert on exactly what the president cannot do in this situation, is our perfectly timed leadoff guest tonight to talk about this. But this is the now important breaking news of this hour.
That is oftentimes, the courts gives us some good news. So that it sounds like it's a big piece of it. One better to talk to about it than Jamie Raskin.
And this was a very, very fast ruling by this judge, less than 24 hours to do this. So we're going to get right to it.
Sounds good. I'll be watching.
Thanks, Jen. Well, the list of what Donald Trump didn't do today is, as usual, much, much longer than the list of what he did do today. Donald Trump did not do anything to win or end his war with Iran. Donald Trump didn't say anything encouraging to the families of the American military personnel serving in Donald Trump's war, not the slightest hint that those troops would be home for Christmas. The families still have no idea about that. Donald Trump did nothing to lower a single price of anything in the United States today. After promising his voters that prices would come down, he would bring them down as soon as he took the oath of office. And Donald Trump spent another day failing to end Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine after promising his believing voters that he would end Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine on the first day of his presidency. Donald Trump did not do one thing today that he promised his voters that he would do when he was running for president. And instead, Donald Trump decided to insult the intelligence of every voter who voted for him. And for the small minority of voters who are left clinging to the wreckage of the Trump presidency and still supporting Donald Trump went out of his way to insult them today. Because he apparently believes that the remaining Trump voters still supporting him are at least as stupid as he is. And so he believes that they are now impressed and thrilled that on the day that he did absolutely nothing useful as president of the United States, and on the day when he continued to try to destroy voting as we know it in America and destroy any semblance of stability in the Middle East and continue to push up inflation with his war and his tariffs, Donald Trump was absolutely sure that he could thrill the hearts and minds of his remaining fanatical followers by changing the name of a lake.
The purpose of this, more than anything else, is we're going to be changing the name of Lake Ontario, effective immediately, to Lake America.
That's what he did today. Remember when he promised to do that during the presidential campaign? No, of course we don't, because he didn't promise to do that. He was busy lying about how he was going to bring prices down if he got to be president. He was busy lying about pretending to care about an affordability crisis that has only gotten worse because he is president. And he now says that that affordability crisis, which he campaigned on without using those words because he doesn't understand them, that is a fraud, that no one is struggling with prices in America. No one. The issue he ran on, he's now saying is a fraud. And what matters to him now is renaming a body of water that was named 400 years ago before there was a United States of America. Imagine serving in Donald Trump's war in Iran today, and you see that that is what the commander-in-chief is doing today. That's what he did. That's all he did. That's what the commander-in-chief cares about today. Donald Trump's already said he's in no hurry to end his war in Iran. He's already said he has no timetable at all for his war in Iran. And then he proved it to everyone serving in that war today and their families by spending his time on the name of a lake. And everyone serving in his war knows that the name of that lake is not going to change, no matter what Donald Trump said today. No one in the world is going to go along with that change of name. The only power Donald Trump has is to change how that lake is referred to in federal documents. He cannot force anyone to call it anything other than Lake Ontario out loud. Not one Republican member of Congress stood up and cheered their president today for trying to rename a lake. Everyone knows the next president is going to undo that particular little piece of madness on the first day of the next presidency with an executive order vacating Donald Trump's childish executive order today. Donald Trump and I both learned a new word today, thanks to the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who said this. The name Lake Ontario comes from the Wendat word Ontario, which appropriately means the lake is beautiful, the lake is big. The name is more than 400 years old, predating both the Confederation of Canada and the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. We know that America is changing their trading relationships, their foreign policies, their national monuments, their hydronyms. Canada also knows that naming reality means calling it Lake Ontario then, now, and always. If Donald Trump read that, he no doubt had to turn to someone, as I did today, to find out the meaning of the word hydronym, which is a proper name for a body of water. Thank you, Prime Minister Carney, for today's vocabulary lesson. No one has ever learned a new word from Donald Trump, the most limited vocabulary occupant of the White House in history. Lake Ontario is a border lake separating Ontario from the state of New York. And today, the governor of New York immediately said, quote, New York won't be calling it that, in response to Donald Trump's social media post about the silly new name that even he could not remember.
The lake change, Lake of America, was something I've been thinking about for a long time, actually.
Yeah, sure. But he hadn't been thinking about it long enough to remember that he didn't rename it to the Lake of America. He renamed it Lake America, a name that will only exist in some federal documents and will be removed from those documents just over 2 years from now, when the next president of the United States will be busy removing the Trump stain from American government. Donald Trump did this today because he is losing in his trade war with Canada. Donald Trump participated in the negotiating and writing a legal trade agreement with Canada in his first term as president. It was an update of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Donald Trump signed that new North American Free Trade Agreement, and then when he came back to the presidency, Donald Trump immediately violated the trade agreement that he had signed. And that is in the grand old American tradition of violating every agreement this government signed with the native tribes who were here on this land before us. The Department of the Interior was created in 1849 and had a terrible start, spending the rest of the 19th century in cruel and abusive violations of treaties with tribes all over the country. And so it is impossible for Donald Trump's Secretary of the Interior to be the cruelest Secretary of the Interior in history. That's taken by our 19th century secretaries. But he is, by far, the most clownish Secretary of the Interior. Doug Burgum, Donald Trump's buffoonish Secretary of the Interior, stood beside him today at the signing of the executive order about renaming a lake and cheered Donald Trump every step of the way. The executive order is to him, it's to Doug Burgum, it's to the Secretary of the Interior to carry out this name change in federal paperwork. The Trump executive order says, quote, "It is the policy of my administration to recognize the extraordinary contributions of the American people and the rich heritage of our history by naming great natural landmarks for our shared achievements." Okay, then let's start with the Dakotas. Doug Burgum was the governor of North Dakota. Dakota was not some American hero. Dakota, like Ontario, is a tribal word, meaning friend, friendly. That word does not honor the people Donald Trump wants to honor. That word honors the people who were here before us. So does the word Minnesota, so does the word Massachusetts, Michigan, Connecticut, and so many other important place names in this country that came from the language and the people who were here before Christopher Columbus ever sailed west. You can reach the Atlantic Ocean from Lake Ontario by passing through the St. Lawrence Seaway. Donald Trump's executive order about Lake Ontario today actually mentions the St. Lawrence Seaway, but says nothing about changing that name. Why not? It is a hydronym for a body of water on the border of New York and Canada, just like Lake Ontario. And it was named the St. Lawrence River in 1604 by a French explorer. So when is Donald Trump going to change that name to an American name? St. Lawrence was not an American. That name doesn't honor anyone in this country. What is important in this story is its proof beyond a reasonable doubt of the tiny-minded stupidity that guides Donald Trump through every day, every minute in the White House, and everything that he does in the White House, including waging war. He wages war as stupidly as he renames things on maps. He wages war as he fails to rename the St. Lawrence Seaway on the same principle that he used to rename Lake Ontario today. Why should that principle of honoring Americans only hold for Lake Ontario and nothing else? The reason is that it's not a principle. It's just gibberish made up by Donald Trump and the liars who work for him in the White House and the lying cabinet secretaries who stand beside him in the Oval Office supporting every single bit of madness that he publicly exhibits. The Secretary of Defense supports a madman waging war in Iran. The Secretary of Health and Human Services revels in the fact that he gets to work for a madman in the White House who supports his utter, lethal insanity that he spews about public health. An Attorney General who defended Donald Trump in court when Donald Trump was convicted of crimes, stands eager tonight to help Donald Trump commit more crimes against the Constitution and crimes against election laws in this country that forbid the president from having any role in our elections. Donald Trump has an attorney general who is as eager to help him violate election law in support of his illegal demand for state voter rolls as his clownish Secretary of the Interior is in standing beside him today in that shameful, ugly moment in the Oval Office. Donald Trump won 0 votes today with his attack on Lake Ontario. There wasn't one Trump voter out there who was drifting away from supporting Donald Trump because of his war in Iran or because of his increase in inflation through tariffs, which are really sales taxes on all of us, including every Trump voter. There wasn't one of those Trump voters who turned around today and said, "Oh, I'm coming back. I'm coming back to Donald Trump because he got tough with Canada, the best neighboring country in the world. He got tough with Canada by writing new words on a map that no one will use." This is the kind of madness that will live after Donald Trump's presidency, but it will not live in the presidency. We will never see madness like this in the presidency again if we're lucky. And Donald Trump alone now believes that his remaining supporters are so stupid that they will cheer him on the way the clearly stupidest Secretary of the Interior in history cheered him on today. There is much to fear in Donald Trump tonight. Renaming lakes is not one of those things. A madman in the presidency of the United States gives the world more to fear than anyone else could give us to fear. And what he did with the map of North America today can and will be ignored and legally undone. It'll be ignored from now on, and it'll be legally undone 2 years from now. But what he gave future historians today is further proof of how utterly lost he is in everything else that he touches. The English didn't know that George III was insane during his reign, but a couple of centuries later, it was a unanimously recognized historical fact, to the point where when Alan Bennett's brilliant play opened in 1991, titled The Madness of King George III, audiences could laugh, and audiences could give standing ovations. Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be laughing at plays and movies about the madness of Donald Trump. Today's moment will be a scene in those plays and movies, renaming maps, renaming a Great Lake. That'll be in there. They will be able to laugh about the madness of Donald Trump, but we will have to endure it. We will have to survive it. And voters are now empowered to control the madness of Donald Trump by electing Democrats to Congress this year if our right to vote, very much including our right to vote by mail, survives the madness of Donald Trump. Leading off our discussion tonight is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Raskin, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We were going to run a little clip of video at the end of what you just heard of Donald Trump saying that he might also rename the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, thereby giving historians all the more they might need to declare him clinically insane, as I'm sure history will. Let's go to the real breaking news of the night, which is the federal judge in Boston.
Can I stop you for 1 second, Lawrence?
Please go ahead.
I've got a new hydronym for you. How about for the reflecting pool? Let's go with what we call it down here in the DMV, the Strait of Warm Ooze. How about that?
You win. You win on hydronyms today. That's you've got it. Congressman, the real breaking news of the night, Judge Talwani in Boston has ruled in favor of California, in favor of Massachusetts, all the states, Illinois included, who have objected to this and issued a temporary restraining order that could, in and of itself, possibly, or let me put it that to you as a question now, procedurally, might we now be in a spot where this will be blockable in terms of the next election?
Absolutely. I mean, the bad Supreme Court decision that just happened was based on ripeness, that there had not been a final rule issued. A final rule was issued by the Postal Service, and Judge Talwani was able to completely shut the thing down on a temporary restraining order, saying it is not the president's role, much less the role of the post office, to be dictating rules regarding how states send ballots to their own voters. That's an outrageous interference by the executive branch when the Constitution confers no role whatsoever on the president of the United States in the administration of congressional elections. And so it's true that Congress could regulate it under Article 1, Section 4. Congress could supplement the primary power of the states to administer elections, but Congress has not done that. Nobody has even claimed, the Trump DOJ is not even claiming that Congress has passed some law giving the president the power to override the judgment of the states. And that's just the beginning of it. I mean, really what this is the executive branch of government commandeering state election officials to compel them to turn over what their ballot envelopes are going to look like, their return ballot envelopes, and so on. And that was struck down in a case long ago called Prince versus United States, saying the federal government could not commandeer the time, the energy, and the resources of state government officials in order to implement a federal plan. In other words, they've got nothing to do with it. And even if Congress had acted this way, Congress could not do what the president's lieutenants are trying to do through the post office.
So as we go forward in this case, there are other lawsuits that were filed. We have one now that has the restraining order that applies to all of these states that are in this situation. What is left for Donald Trump to try here?
Well, they will keep appealing, no doubt. Every day that passes, every week that passes makes it even more difficult, even for the most extreme MAGA justices, to actually throw this terrible monkey wrench into the elections, because, it's a totally convoluted process where the states have to get their election materials approved by the Postal Service. Then they have to put a special barcode on every envelope going out to every voter who's approved by their process that the states have nothing to do with. So the states are not even going to be able to check to see that their voters are not being disenfranchised on a partisan basis by Trump's post office. Then they've got to go and educate all of their state election officials and then educate the public on how this thing works. And so they're going to have to tell people, no, you might be expecting an election ballot, but somehow you're not passing some test that the Postal Service is imposing on you. So you've got to go and vote now. Then they got to prepare for a lot more people at the polls. It's just chaos. It's precisely what the Supreme Court has at least occasionally said under the Purcell principle cannot be done against state election processes and against the voters.
So Donald Trump ordered the post office to not deliver mail. Don't deliver mail if we don't like the envelopes. Federal law makes it a requirement of the post office to deliver mail. The lawsuit that the state attorneys generals filed cites the specific federal law that says the Postal Service is under a legal obligation to deliver all of these envelopes, and the president simply cannot order them not to deliver these envelopes.
Well, that's absolutely right. And, what's comical about this is Donald Trump really thinks he's a king who can issue a royal edict in the form of an executive order. An executive order is essentially an interdepartmental memorandum saying, well, it's the policy of the executive branch to do X, Y, or Z. It doesn't overturn a federal regulation. It doesn't overturn or override a federal law, much less can it overturn or override the Constitution of the United States, which makes the states the primary administrators of congressional elections with only supplementary override authority given to Congress. And of course, Congress has not passed any of the nonsense they're talking about doing.
What else do you foresee that Donald Trump might try to do to interfere with this election?
Whatever he can do. I've been traveling around the country, Lawrence, and people say, is Donald Trump going to try to steal the election? I say, no, he's already trying to steal the election. That's all he thinks about every day, other than the reflecting pool and the Kennedy Center and whether he's going to bulldoze that the way he bulldozed the East Wing of the White House. As you pointed out at the beginning, it's utterly deranged, and it will be the subject one day of a great musical. But in the meantime, we've got to fight. We're in the fight of our lives here. And, somebody said to me when I was out in Michigan, in the 1st District of Michigan, where Callie Barr is running such an amazing campaign, is going to upset the Republican because of Trump's trade war against Canada. But somebody said to me, well, can you guarantee that we're going to have a free and fair election? And I just said, I'm sorry, if you want to guarantee, buy a toaster. But if you want a democracy, go out and fight for it every single day. That's where we are now.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
You bet, Lawrence.
And coming up, Donald Trump revealed just how lost he is in his own war in Iran today. Senator Alex Padilla of California will join us next. Today, Donald Trump revealed just how lost he is in his own war.
The Strait is open, as you know. The Strait of Hormuz is open. We have control, and we have the blockade. Iran's not getting anything. Nothing is going through. Not one ship has gotten
Will you
through.
punish Putin or Russia if they continue
Well, it
to do
depends.
business
It
with
depends.
Iran?
So far, I think Russia's behaved quite well, having to do with the Strait of Hormuz.
Why not sanction Chinese banks, though, who are doing business
Well, who
with
said
Iran?
I'm not?
What other leaders have you spoken to about this pressure campaign to get them to cut off ties with Iran?
About Iran? Mm-hmm. There's not a lot to speak to. We don't want to speak to them. We're not looking to meet or anything. The Strait is open.
The Strait of Hormuz is not open, and the entire world knows that. Even Trump voters know that. The United States does not control the Strait of Hormuz. The Atlantic reports that Donald Trump, quote, has been bored of the war for a while. The president has privately told his political allies that once the Strait of Hormuz is reopened, he is inclined to simply declare victory and move on, one outside advisor and a senior administration official told us. MS Now reports that even as the USS Lincoln is heading home after a 9-month deployment, quote, 600 sailors aboard 2 guided missile destroyers that were deployed to protect the aircraft carrier are staying behind and will remain deployed at sea. The sailors aboard the USS Spruance and the USS Murphy have faced many of the same conditions reported aboard the Lincoln, including shortages of food and supplies, plumbing failures, and low morale, according to 3 people in close touch with sailors on those destroyers. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Alex Padilla of California. Senator, as you know, the aircraft carrier USS Lincoln is headed home to its home port in your state of San Diego. What do you expect? You have constituents on that aircraft carrier. You have constituents who are family members of people on that aircraft carrier. What are you expecting when that aircraft carrier gets home?
Good to be back with you, Lawrence. And look, you're absolutely right. We've heard from several of the sailors' families, which is why we know that there's reports of the deplorable conditions on the USS Lincoln are indeed true, despite the denials by the White House, despite the denials from President Trump to Pete Hegseth on down. And I think you laid it out perfectly well. You know, before this unauthorized war that Donald Trump has dragged our country into, the Strait of Hormuz was open, and there were no tolls for ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. And now to think that that's on the table in these negotiations, that Trump just can't win, can't seem to advance, can't seem to find his way out, shows you the impact of Trump's failed leadership and failed policies. And when it comes to the Lincoln finally coming home to San Diego, which we fully expect in the weeks ahead, look, reunions of family members, relief, I think, for people to be back home, not just back with their families, but on their way back to restoring both their physical and their mental health. The conditions that we have heard of are deplorable and unacceptable. The hard-working, brave service members deserve so much better than a commander-in-chief who could care less about their health and well-being.
I want to get your reaction to the breaking news of the night involving California, which uses more mail ballots than any state in the union, 13 million of them. Your state's Attorney General Rob Bonta was here last night after they filed the lawsuit with Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell in federal court in Boston, and a couple of other dozen attorneys general in between Massachusetts and California joining that case. They've had a big win tonight from the federal judge in Boston, putting a restraining order on Donald Trump's order to the Postal Service. What's next?
Yeah, well, a big win that should have been an easy win because the Constitution is clear, right? The Constitution recognizes that states run elections, states administer elections, and if the federal government has a say in the time, place, or manner with which we vote, That comes from Congress, not the executive branch. So no matter how many times Trump says it, he does not have the power to take over elections, to eliminate vote by mail, or whatever else he wants to do. If only the Supreme Court would have recognized that and acted accordingly last week. So here's from a practical standpoint, Lawrence, I served as California Secretary of State. We are now 68 days from Election Day. By federal law, next Friday is the date by which ballots must go out to members of the military and other overseas voters. So ballots have to be printed. Envelopes have to be designed, laid out, and printed as well. That's all done. Election administrators are doing their job. They will administer safe and secure elections. It is too late for Donald Trump, the Supreme Court, or anybody to try to change the rules at this point. That's the good news. The bad news is, to put it past Donald Trump to keep trying? Of course not. But as long as he keeps trying, attorneys general, Democratic senators, voting rights advocates, and the people will keep fighting back.
California Senator Alex Padilla, thank you very much for joining our coverage tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, the cruelty of Donald Trump is on display once again in Texas, where a 5-year-old boy and his father were seized by ICE and taken into custody. That's next. On August 16th, 5-year-old Liam Tadeo was riding with his father in Austin, Texas, when ICE stopped their vehicle. ICE detained his father, and Liam was taken into custody. Yesterday, Texas Democratic Senate candidate James Tallarico said this.
Every kidnapped child is our child. Every separated family is our family. And we will fight for their rights as if they were our own. A 5-year-old Texan just spent the first day of school in an ICE detention center. ICE kidnapped Liam Tadeo and his father on their way to a soccer game in Austin. They're now detained at Dilley Detention Center. More than 100 children are detained at Dilley, and many of them have been there for more than 100 days. The conditions at Dilley are inhumane. People are sick. Babies have been hospitalized. Some children have started cutting themselves, and others are talking about suicide. Liam is a child like any other. He should be in kindergarten. He should be going to soccer games with his dad. He should be collecting Pokemon cards and playing with his friends. But instead, this government has thrown him in a prison camp hundreds of miles away from home. A few months ago, a child detained at Dilley wrote a letter begging for help. He said, "I feel like I'll never get out of here. I just ask that you don't forget about us." We cannot forget about Liam or the other kids that are detained at Dilley. Every kidnapped child is our child. Every separated family is our family. And we will fight for their rights as if they were our own.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Greg Casar of Texas. He is the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congressman, this happened in your district, in your hometown. What is the latest update on this case?
Let me explain what happened here. Just up the road from where I'm sitting right now in Austin, Texas, a dad, just like any of us dads, was doing the best thing you can do. Take your 5-year-old son to a soccer game before school starts the next week. And for no reason at all, no crime, not even a traffic violation, ICE stopped their car, arrested Victor and his 5-year-old son, Liam, and took them to the Dilley Detention Center, which is hundreds of miles away. I've been there, and it is just a trailer prison camp in the desert. And the latest of what has happened in the case is that ICE used 5-year-old Liam as both bait and as leverage. And let me explain, because it's really important for people to understand this. I sat there as lawyers explained to Liam's mom in her house that ICE has been using kids as bait, that if moms go and try to get their kid They don't oftentimes get them out of these detention centers. They go and stick the other parent in the detention center with the kid. And then the worst part, the lawyer's having to explain to his mom, Maria, that kids are being used as leverage, that if they try to fight some of these cases and keep their husband and their child in this country, have their due process rights, that ICE has been threatening to deport the dad, leave the kid here, and suddenly categorize the child as an unaccompanied minor and put them basically in an orphan shelter system where kids can get lost for months. And so then Maria did what any parent would do in that situation. And she signed a quote unquote agreement to voluntarily have her husband and son deported. Kids being used as bait and as leverage for Trump's mass deportation machine. It's cruel. It's an enormous, horrible use of our public tax dollars. It's got to stop. And as our future Senator James Tallarico said, he's going to represent us in Texas. We should be treating all kids as our kids, and a humane administration would bring this family back home.
So Liam is one of the, I guess, major criminals that Donald Trump promised to deport and has now deported.
I want every Republican congressperson to have to look me in the eye, look their constituents in the eye, and say why this 5-year-old should have federal law enforcement sent after him, why we should be spending our taxpayer dollars locking him up in a prison. Tell me what this 5-year-old named Liam, what public safety threat he posed. And when I do ask this question of my Republican colleagues, they get a little uncomfortable and say, well, law and order. Give me a break. They say law and order. But what they've done is let January 6 rioters off the hook, pardon drug traffickers and Donald Trump's billionaire friends who've been convicted of money laundering. It's so hypocritical, but there is just not even words for it. Think about it. We're using the entire force of the United States government to arrest 5-year-old kids and send them to a country they've never been in or barely even remember, while saying that's law and order. It's just, give me a break.
Congressman Greg Casar, thank you very much for joining us tonight and for giving us that tragic update in this story.
Thank you for covering it, Lawrence. It's really important.
Coming up, the Wall Street Journal is calling Donald Trump's trade war with Canada the dumbest trade war in history. And now the dumbest trade war in history has become a major issue in the border state of Maine, in the United States Senate election there. Maine's Democratic Senate nominee, Troy Jackson, joins us next. The Washington Post reports this about Donald Trump's trade war with Canada. States that depend on international trade, including Maine, Michigan, and Iowa, are among those at the forefront of the midterm battleground map. Some Republicans in those states have urged Trump to pull back, including Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who is locked in a tight re-election battle. A new Fox poll is showing Susan Collins 2 points behind Democrat Troy Jackson in Maine's U.S. Senate campaign. That's within the margin of error. Our next guest, Maine's Democratic U.S. Senate nominee Troy Jackson, posted this yesterday. Trump restarting this trade war is a betrayal to our working families, and broad tariffs act as a direct tax on Mainers. Susan Collins has completely failed to stop him. As always, she's got concerns about what these broad new tariffs will do to Maine, but she's got no action. And when given the chance to actually vote to stop Trump from raising our costs, she voted no. Mainers don't need press release lip service. We need a senator who actually votes to protect our paychecks, not someone who voted 96% of the time with a president who is selling us out. Joining us now is Troy Jackson, the Democratic nominee for Senate in Maine. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We haven't heard yet here what Susan Collins said today about Donald Trump renaming Lake Ontario. Has she said anything about that in Maine?
Well, I don't know, Lawrence. If she did, I'm sure that she's concerned about it.
Yeah, right. She does voice concern. She never seems to get in Donald Trump's way.
No, absolutely not. She loves to crow about how she's the chair of appropriations. It's such a powerful position, but she's absolutely unwilling to use that power to stop him from doing things that are hurting states like Maine. And that really is the issue. I mean, look, I've appointed appropriations chairs here in the Maine legislature. I know what power people like that have once they get appropriations chair. And it really is a joke that, she won't use that power. The only way she uses it is to make sure that Donald Trump gets what he wants.
Yeah, she, in that position, has power over Donald Trump's spending. She can stop it. She can allow it. She's in a position to roadblock everything Donald Trump wants to do on spending. And she hasn't stopped a single thing that I'm aware of.
No, that's exactly the point. I mean, you can't argue about the power that you have and then be unwilling to use it. And that's exactly what she's doing. I mean, she could actually help people in the state of Maine with her position there, but instead she gave, Elon Musk and others tax breaks. That tax breaks come off of Medicaid. Our healthcare system, it is crashing here in Maine. We're losing hospitals, we're losing birthing centers, nursing homes. People are losing their health insurance because of no subsidies, just so Elon Musk and other people could have more money. And, we got the tariffs, which is the Wall Street person said it was a joke. All these things are coming right now, and she could do something to stop it. And I just see her as a complete failure in these regards. And so.
The border states like Maine seem to understand the craziness of the Trump trade war with Canada. You've got a lot of cross-border commercial activity every day in Maine. How has that been affected?
Well, it's been affected now, for 2 years. I mean, with this back and forth, people not knowing what's going on. I mean, I think, Donald Trump and his minions know what's going on. And that may be actually what's happening here is that, they're playing the stock market based off of when he puts the tariff on, when he takes it off. I'm not really sure, but, we've been losing tourism in Maine for the last 2 years. It's really quite striking. And like little communities up where I live depend on that cross-border shopping, little mom and pop stores. They're not coming. We have natural resource sector here in Maine with forestry, farming, and fishing. A lot of our parts come out of Canada. A lot of our products go to Canada. And that's all been a real huge issue. And, just for everyday people, groceries, the price of products are going up. I mean, this is a tax on the consumers here in Maine. And we're feeling it, and it's really become really challenging. So I absolutely disagree with this. I think it is stupid. These broad-based tariffs are killing the state, and it's going to be hard to put it back together.
Maine Democratic nominee for Senate, Troy Jackson. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Well, appreciate it, Lawrence. You go to jacksonmaine.com and you can hear more about us.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back. Maine's Democratic candidate for Senate, Troy Jackson, gets tonight's last word.